It's not often that the totality of humanity gets to see what the kings and the pharaohs do. We don't often get to see behind the veil and see them hanging out. And there's obviously an element prior to the revelations of mystique, because this all seems pretty wild. Like, oh my God, these are the world's most rich and powerful men, and they have jets, and they're politicians, billionaires, prime ministers. They own and control the world's most powerful weapon systems and armies and militaries, and some of them are actually involved in some of the world's most intricate spy systems and networks, like Mossad. And oh my God, this is also wild. And then once it's all been revealed, these are a bunch of fucking freak pedophile nerds. Is really what they in totality. It more than anything is that these are just freak pedophile nerds is what I learned. And that brings us to the nonces. Seems like Britain is taking the nonces more seriously than the rest of the world. Right now, British police have arrested Epstein-linked ex-ambassador Mandelson. Former top Labour Party official Peter Mandelson is being probed for suspected misconduct in public office. If you were unaware, Mandelson is one of the people who not only destroyed Jeremy Corbyn's career by falsely accusing him of being an anti-Semite, but also may have been a traitor to Britain by potentially giving up economic secrets of the nation to Jeffrey Epstein to do with what he wanted. We're not entirely sure. Did he sell those secrets to Ehud Barak? Did he give them to Bill Clinton? Did he give them to Bill Gates for whatever reason? We have no idea. We don't know that yet. That's what I assume they're probably going to be investigating right now. But for everyone involved, it doesn't look great. The embattled former UK ambassador Peter Mandelson has been detained as part of a misconduct investigation into his ties with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The former official, who was a major figure in the UK's Labour Party for decades and previously served as the ambassador to the US, has been taken away from his home in London by authorities on Sunday. Without directly naming Mandelson, in keeping with his policy, the Metropolitan Police have confirmed the 72-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office and taken to London Police Station to be interviewed. Mandelson, 72, who still holds the British title of Lord, has been engulfed in scandal since the trove of emails released by the U.S. Justice Department last month shed new light on a connection with the late Epstein. The emails reveal a closer relationship than had been publicly known, and that Mandelson shared information with Epstein when he had been minister in former Prime Minister Gordon Brown's government.
For Keir Starmer, time could be running out.
Oh no.
But rewind just 20 months.
Does this mean he's been lettuced? Is that what happens? Does one become lettuced? We now have a competition to see who will last longer between him and the lettuce.
And things looked a lot brighter. He and the Labour Party were riding high, back in power after 14 years and a landslide victory. Now, not even halfway through his premiership, the outlook is gloomy. The economic growth Labour promised has not materialised. And despite a huge majority, Starmer has faced repeated rebellions on important votes.
Is that a giant Labubu? Sorry, I know. Oh, it's not. I thought for a second. It's not relevant, but I thought there was a connection to something.
Repeated rebellions on important votes. In his North London constituency, the mood is low.
I think that we're all really hopeful, and now basically that is completely not the case. I think that we all just feel really disappointed. I know that a lot of people who had the hopes for what Labour was going to do are now turning more towards Green Party.
Has a lot of change.
That's good.
Not really.
Green
Just
Party leader seems
back
awesome.
And forth, I was wishing for more for the people.
What Keir Starmer promised voters here in his constituency and across the country was change. A break from the scandals that marred the last Conservative government. But now a scandal linked to his...
Conservative governments, all right? It was like scandal after scandal after scandal. It's like, oh, who are they going to put in next? Oh, it's Rishi Sunak. Oh, no, before him, what is Liz Truss? Oh, yeah, before that, it's the clown man, Mr. Boris Johnson himself. Who wants a little tea then? Yes. It's like,
own judgment has
been a great
engulfed
string.
His party, with prominent Labour figures warning it could threaten his leadership.
I miss the head of lettuce. I, too, miss the head of lettuce.
On Christmas Day in 2012 at 6 in the morning, Jeffrey Epstein, who's just gotten out of a county jail where he had been serving a 13-month sentence, gets an email out of the blue from one of the richest men in the world. It reads, "I've been working to the edge of sanity this year, and so once my kids head home after Christmas, I really want to hit the party scene in St. Bart's or elsewhere and let loose. A peaceful island experience is the opposite of what I'm looking for." 2 months later, he emails Epstein again, asking which night on the
It's so sad I know exactly who this is. Not that it's not on screen, but we all know. Because there's no one who begged more to go to the fucking pedo island than Elon Musk.
Island would have the wildest party. In return, Epstein offers to send a helicopter to bring him. That man was Elon Musk, and many years later, now the richest man on Earth, he would tell the world, publicly, disgustedly, in his own words, Epstein tried to get me to go on his island, and I refused. He wrote, I had very little correspondence with Epstein and declined repeated invitations to go to his island or fly on his Lolita Express. But Elon Musk was lying, and he was not alone. For years, the friends of Jeffrey Epstein have been in a battle to prove their innocence. Who had known him only as a rich financier, and who knew his darkest secrets?
I never went to the island, I never met any women, and although the time was a mistake, it had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
Who had cut him off after he went to prison the first time?
This is Peter Attia.
And who came right back to support him after he was released? Who knew exactly what he was and stayed in his inner circle anyway?
Did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. I have nothing to hide.
And so now, with 3.5 million...
Well, I mean, it seems like you have everything to hide, because you've lied about it all. I still don't get when it comes to Lutnick. Why not just do nothing? It's so much better than what you chose to do, which is this grandiose fucking spectacle for the world to see. It's like, I went to his house once, and I saw him, and I saw that he had a massage table, and I asked him, you like massages, do you? And he said, yeah, just the good kind. And it was at that moment that I knew, and my wife knew. And you know what we did? We looked at each other. We stood up and we said, good day. And I never set foot in there again. All lies. All lies. Just lies. Like, hey, Epstein, can I come on the plane? Yeah, no, I'll bring my kids. Like, that's what was actually happening behind the scenes.
In documents from Epstein's personal computer accounts being released to the public, we finally have an answer to all of these questions. And the answer is, almost everyone stayed around him.
Yep.
This video is brought to you by Nebula, the only place where you can watch Mad Kings. And for that reason, it feels pretty fake. To add insult to the injury, you then implore me to please delete the emails regarding your STD, you request that I provide you antibiotics that you can surreptitiously give to Melinda, and the description of your penis. You also made it clear to me that I...
To be clear, by the way, this is Epstein emailing himself, so we don't have direct evidence if this was something that he would do. Just as kind of a preemptive, maybe down the road, I can blackmail them with thing. I don't know. I don't know if that's the way his brain was working at this point in time, where he was just basically, I'm going to email myself and I'm going to say all these incriminating things that list out all the shit that Bill Gates did. So I just have it as a matter of fact, a document somewhere, right? So just so we're clear, Bill Gates, contracted an STD through the child rape, and May wanted to get a pill to help with the STD, and then wanted to give his wife the pill so that he wouldn't give his wife the STD, because then she would find out about the child rape. Like, I don't know. We're not entirely sure. But either way, this is obviously unbelievably fucked up.
Not to refer to redacted, as that is another topic that must remain between the two of us, and in return for all these requests, which I would have done without a second thought, I should continue to provide you the same level of service and dedication that I have done so diligently until you are ready to discard me and our friendship. Bill Gates, of course, absolutely denies everything to do with him and Epstein. He has for years, and he still does today. And hey, to be fair to Bill Gates, nothing else in the docs technically corroborates the outlandish claims that Epstein makes in his email. The only problem is that denials only go so far when your own family refuses to stand in your corner, while Bill Gates and his team were outright dismissing the documents as the desperate ramblings of a man who clearly was trying to hold him hostage.
I never went to the island, I never met any women, and so, the more...
Again, to be clear, for one to successfully hold you hostage, they must have something with which they can hold you hostage, right? Doesn't matter if that happens to be rope, a room, handcuffs, potentially incriminating information about how you got an STD from raping children and gave it to your wife. Whatever it is, that's why it's kind of fucked up, right? To be like, oh, those are the ramblings of a madman who wanted to basically blackmail me. Blackmail you with what? Oh, did I say blackmail? Those were the ramblings of a madman. Okay. Yes. All right. Well, I guess, yeah, that's all we need to know.
that comes out, the more clear it'll be that Although the time was a mistake, it had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
Melinda Gates had her own story to tell. In a brand new interview on NPR's Wildcard show, Bill Gates, now ex-wife of 27 years, described the latest Epstein document release as filling her with unbelievable sadness and reminding her of struggles she faced during her marriage. She would say, "I'm able to take my own sadness and look at these young girls and say, my God, how did that happen to them? At least for me, I've been able to move on in life, and I hope there's some justice for those now women." I don't think it would take a chess grandmaster to figure out what she means by that. But Bill Gates is only one person in an ever-growing, seemingly endless list of people who stayed in Epstein's life, shamelessly supporting him for years while they knew he was a pedophile the entire time. But Bill Gates wasn't alone. In fact, when it comes to the full picture of Jeffrey Epstein's social life, this is only the tip of the iceberg. And perhaps nobody illustrates that better than the man who spent 2025 loudly demanding the Epstein files be released, only for their release to reveal his own lies. Elon Musk.
He's still going, by the way. I know no one wants to set foot into fucking the Nazi app territory anymore, but Elon Musk is still being like, Bannon all over the Epstein files. Gotta go after that Bannon guy. Oh yeah, Bannon, very bad. Oh, very bad. Check him out. Oh, he's all over the Epstein files. Yeah. And then you're like, so are you, buddy. So are you. I say arrest them both.
Musk is the richest man in the world. Inventor and leader of companies creating brain-computer interfaces, electric cars, rocket ships, and more. He's also a longtime friend of Jeffrey Epstein. On September 25th, 2012, Epstein writes to Elon Musk, "If you find some time, come visit me on my island in the Caribbean. Bring your friend or friends." Musk replies, "Sounds good. We'll try to make it." For years following his arrest and death, Elon Musk tried desperately to distance himself from Jeffrey Epstein. In September of 2025, as the case began to rear its head again, he wrote, "Epstein tried to get me to go on his island and I refused. But as it would turn out, the truth would be nearly the exact opposite of what he had insisted."
Yeah, that's the wild thing. It's just like no matter how many times one of these rich billionaire pedophiles tries to tell the world, "Oh, no, I'm one of the good ones, actually." It's like, no, you're not, because there's no such thing. None of you. None. Like, when it comes to Epstein, it seems like no one who is in close association with him in any way was anything other than a complete monster creep themselves. The people who are not complete monster creeps, there's documented evidence of them recognizing that he was a complete monster creep and being like, nah, I don't want to fuck with this shit. The guy's a monster creep. Fuck up. Like, no. Like Norman Finkelstein, right? Like, there's a great example of someone who actually has an email that was like, "Oh, no, I think, honestly, all the pedos should be, like, fucking thrown into a wood chipper," kind of shit. And that was the end of it. He was not like, "Oh, I'm curious. I'd like to know more. I've heard of this man, and perhaps he's misunderstood," or any of that other weird shit that other people were starting to do, or those other kind of emails where you see people being like, I think that perhaps he's been unfairly maligned, you know, things like that, right? Or let alone if you want to go as far as the Noam Chomskys of the world, who actively went through the trouble of trying to, like, give him advice on how to get away with all of his child rape and all that kind of shit in terms of, like, his PR. Like, hey, yeah, you've got a really bad reputation, but I think you're being unfairly Me Too'd right now, so here's what you should do. You should really blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
For so long. 2 months after their first interaction, he emails Jeffrey Epstein to ask which day would have the wildest party on his island. He talks about wanting to let loose and have fun, and asks if Epstein has any parties planned because he needs the opposite of a peaceful island experience. In return, Epstein offers to send a helicopter to bring him. Another email from the fall of 2013 shows Epstein inviting Musk to visit him at his house in New York and meet many interesting people around the time of the UN General Assembly, to which Elon Musk responds with a rant about how busy he is, before Epstein asks, "Do you think I'm retarded? Just kidding. There's no one over 25 and they're all very cute." Then, a year later, around Christmas time again, Elon Musk asks if it's a good time to visit the island. Even later on, they would email to coordinate times for Epstein to come have lunch and tour the SpaceX facilities with Musk, and even after that, they would talk more about Epstein's idea to expand Tesla distribution to Israel. Elon Musk's public reaction to these emails has been one of complete deflection and denial. However, his public statements do contradict what's in the messages. Elon Musk never refused to visit. In fact, he begged for invitations. He coordinated meetings. He invited himself, all while Epstein was a registered file sex offender who just got out of prison 3 years earlier. And here's what should really terrify you. While Elon Musk and Bill Gates may have drawn the most attention, perhaps because their hypocrisy is so shocking, perhaps because of their stature.
Yeah, and they're also very prominent public figures. I keep trying to point this out, like, most billionaires in the world are not like Elon Musk. They don't want you to know who they are. They don't want you to know intimate details about them. They don't want you to worship them as a public figure or personality. They want to be able to do all of their weird and fucked up shit behind the scenes and get away with it and not have to deal with all that. Why in the world would I want to become some kind of public figure that's going to be polarizing? Some people will hate me. Some people will love me. What I say publicly could invest shareholder value or influence my other businesses. It's a mess. I don't want anything to do with that. So the majority of billionaires that people do know of, they're usually the same names that you hear over and over again, because these are front-facing people who also have personalities. Like Elon Musk, obviously, the guy craves attention, he craves adoration, he has to cheat and lie. He's not good at video games, but he pretends to be video games, so he cheats at video games. He's not funny, but he pretends to be the meme master, Kickius Maximus, and all this kind of stuff, and then gets and buys a social media platform so people pretend to love him so that they can get more retweets and quote tweets and more amplification in the algorithm by him and shit like that. But that's just Elon Musk. A lot of billionaires, you've never heard of their names. You don't know of their daily activities. You don't know their travel records. You don't know of their personal relationships, and you don't know a lot of their history, and you don't know what they're investing in or spending a lot of their time doing. What we have here is a very rare, it's not often that the totality of humanity gets to see what the kings and the pharaohs do. We don't often get to see behind the veil and see them hanging out. And there's obviously an element prior to the revelations of mystique, because this all seems pretty wild. Like, oh my God, these are the world's most rich and powerful men, and they have jets, and they're politicians, billionaires, prime ministers. They own and control the world's most powerful weapon systems and armies and militaries, and some of them are actually involved in some of the world's most intricate spy systems and networks, like Mossad. And oh my God, this is also wild. And then once it's all been revealed, these are a bunch of fucking freak pedophile nerds. Is really what they in totality. More than anything is that these are just freak pedophile nerds is what I learned, right? This is like they speak to one another in the same way that you would assume teenage boys do, but this is just their discourse and the way they would talk about things. Everything from race and IQ and this eugenics kind of stuff that they were pushing to the Curtis Yarvin style, we want to push for a undemocratic technocracy kind of weird shit like that. Just again, horrifying, disgusting, ugly ass nerds. I say this as a nerd, as a proud nerd, by the way. I loves me video games, love nerding out to nerd shit. I'm just saying that there's evil nerds. These are the evil nerds.
As two of the richest men alive, they are ultimately just a few names out of tens of thousands of very powerful people who continued working and socializing with Epstein even after the whole world knew exactly who and what he was. Peter Attia, best-selling author, researcher, CBS contributor and ambassador, and investor in rapidly growing protein brand David. Overall, charming celebrity doctor media personality known around the world as an expert on aging and longevity. But when you search his name in the Epstein files, he comes back almost 2,000 times. In June of 2015, 6 years after Epstein got out of prison, Attia writes him an email.
I assume because from what we've read about Peter Attia, the longevity and all that kind of stuff, he's selling the world on it. Protein powders, I assume a variety of different products that you can take to try and increase. Has anyone actually tried any of it? I personally don't get the appeal of buying kind of weirdo personalities like cream. It's just especially when they look like this.
In the world as an expert on aging and longevity. But when you search his...
I don't want to be that guy, but when you look like you're wearing dick skin, it's just it's not the kind of person that I would gaze upon and be like, I need to know that man's secret. What is he doing to achieve this?
His name in the Epstein files, he comes back almost 2,000 times. In June of 2015, 6 years after Epstein got out of prison, Attia writes him an email with the subject, "Got a fresh shipment," with a now redacted image attached. Epstein replies with his own now redacted image. Attia says, "Please tell me you found that picture online." Epstein confirms that whatever it is in the image belongs to him, to which Attia responds, "The biggest problem with being friends with you is that the life you lead is so outrageous, yet I can't tell a soul." Over the years, Attia writes to Epstein about going through...
Lance, you made me crack up in a restaurant? Good. What are you doing watching a live Twitch stream in a restaurant? Enjoy your food. Enjoy the company. And don't listen to me prattle on about dick skin.
through withdrawal when he wasn't seeing him. They would joke about the macronutrients in women's pussies. Atiyeh would reach out to Epstein and talk about visiting his island. He would write, "Nothing like Little St. James, I bet." Their emails even reveal a dark truth from Atiyeh's personal life. In a book he wrote in 2023, Atiyeh shared that in 2017, he had been so selfishly absorbed with his work while on a trip to New York City that he did not go home to be with his family in California after his infant son had a heart attack, ultimately only returning 10 days after it had happened.
What?
Meanwhile, he had been emailing with Epstein to organize a meeting during that same week. Just days after the files were released, Atiyeh wrote in his apology tweet that in November of 2018, he read the Miami Herald investigative article about Epstein and was repulsed and nauseated. But even that was just another lie. In reality, after Epstein's crimes were re-exposed by the Miami Herald in 2018, Atiyeh's correspondence with him only continued, all the way up until the spring of 2018.
You know who could have asked him about this? Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan's had him on multiple times. Yeah, just never thought, I guess, to bring it up. Maybe next time. We'll see.
2019, just
a lot of pressures on Joe now for his next inevitable Elon Musk appearance, because you know Elon Musk is going to be on that show again at some point, right? But is he actually going to like ask him anything? He's going to be like, so you straight up lied, eh?
Before Epstein was arrested, Atiyeh would continue emailing to check up on him. He would ask how he was doing in the wake of the article's release, making sure he was okay and that he wasn't taking it too hard. Clearly, he was not repulsed or nauseated enough to bring their friendship to an end. This is the pattern that emerges from Epstein's emails over and over and over. Prominent, powerful people knew exactly who he was and what he had done, and then they stayed in his circle anyway. Peter Atiyeh is not unique in this. He's not even unusual. Honestly, despite everything I may be able to say about his lies and hypocrisy, he's a pretty minor player. Because the archive reveals dozens of others. Tech billionaires, Oscar-winning filmmakers, people whose names we know, people whose work we're familiar with and consume. And all of them tell the same story. We didn't know, we weren't close, and when we did find out, we cut ties immediately. But all of them are lying through their teeth. And so
not only lying through their teeth, but they're getting people, again, like Joe Rogan, to pacify others who might actually be upset about this, right? If Joe Rogan brings on Cheryl Hines, someone who knew Epstein, and her husband, someone who went on a bone-digging excavation with Jeffrey Epstein and flew on his plane multiple times with their family, right? She probably knows a lot more than she's letting on. And Joe had the audacity to say to her face, "It's crazy to me that people were still friends with him after his 2008 conviction, because that's when the world knew he was a pedophile, but they continued to do business with him. That's fucked up." And she's like, yeah, that's her. She's one of those people. One of the very people you're mentioning right now is sitting across the table from you in that moment in time, right now. You could ask her anything. And instead she's like, "Do you read a lot about the files?" You know, and you're just like, "Oh, you know, what I can, you know, how can you not?"
The question that just keeps coming back is simple. What the hell was in it for them? Why would these people stand alongside someone who was such a huge risk? And why are they lying about it now? And that tells you not just something about Epstein, but about what these people are. These people who run our companies, shape our politics, and build the technology and culture we consume every day. In the spring of 2012, Epstein was planning a trip to Paris, and during an email with a friend, he lets it slip that he's going with Woody. Woody, of course, being the 4-time Academy Award-winning, world-famous film director with 50 movies to his name, Woody Allen. And then, Epstein's friend asks if they're going for the pedophile convention, to which Epstein replies, "I think Philae is the plural." And Woody Allen, besides being a filmmaker, is also the man who began a sexual relationship with and later married his own ex-wife's adopted daughter. Woody Allen goes on to appear in the files 7,000 times. They plan visits to Little St. James and Epstein's ranch in New Mexico. They organize dinners in New York and Paris. Epstein gives him furniture. He coordinates with his wife. Woody Allen made movies. He has fame, influence, cultural capital. He's a highly respected artist. Really, he's one of the most beloved filmmakers alive. Critics praise his films, journalists still clamor to talk to him, actors want to work with him, he's received every award there is, but at the same time, he's
a good example alongside Roman Polanski of what like Hollywood does to protect rapists, pedophiles, and further rape culture. Honestly, because, you know, Roman Polanski is such a striking example because there's someone who fled the country, the United States, to not actually face any kind of repercussions for raping a 13-year-old, at which point you would think that, like, okay, well, he fled, he's clearly a pedophile, horrifying monster, rapist, we won't ever have anything to do with him. Then he goes on to make The Pianist, The pianist goes on to win, and he wins an Academy Award for Best Fucking Picture. He can't pick it up because he can't fly into the country, because the second he lands to pick up his Academy Award, he would be arrested. But still, that's a practice, a whole ceremony the Academy Award went through, where it's just like, what does this say to the victims of sexual assault, to children who would be potentially attacked by predators? What kind of messages is sending to women in totality, where it's just like, hey, by the way, yeah, this person may have been a child rapist, but at the same time, art is art, and we gotta acknowledge it for what it is, and here you are,
spent years scheduling visits to Jeffrey Epstein's island. And the fact that he was right there in Epstein's inner circle for years after the conviction, it tells you something that's deeper than just emails. It tells you that Epstein's world wasn't a shadowy conspiracy, it wasn't hidden, it was full of the same people our culture celebrates. His friends were directors with Oscars, scientists who sit on stage and give TED Talks and release best-selling books, politicians who decide our fate. These are the people we've been taught to admire, to trust, and to believe are the good ones in life. But they were all there and they all knew. And I think this is where the Epstein story starts to shift under our feet. It's stopped being about him and what he did, and instead he becomes this virus that spreads.
I always post this, but I'd love for you to watch it. Well, I mean, I've said this before, and there's a link at the very top about chats. Post it in the subreddit. We need to resurrect the subreddit. It's ironically named the Ghoulery, but we need to resurrect the subreddit. So post stuff in there. I can look over it over the weekend.
To everyone around him, until it spreads so far that the entire world starts looking different. Epstein didn't get away with anything because he was clever or even hiding at all. And that makes this not just his crime, but everyone's. Another person who appears repeatedly in Epstein's emails is Reid Hoffman, a tech.
Old Grease, thank you very much for the $2. Sorry, I didn't say this earlier. This doesn't bang, it thunders. I assume that was for the hip hop that was playing earlier, and I agree.
Entrepreneur from California, who in the year 2000 became the senior VP of business development at PayPal, a position that would make him a millionaire after the company was sold to eBay a few years later. But then, along with other PayPal founders and employees, he became part of the PayPal Mafia, an informal group of former PayPal executives known for their own massive success after they sold PayPal to eBay.
This would have been like, should have been the start and the end of cringe. Like, people should have recognized this for what it was and put a stop to this at this moment in time, but instead we didn't. And that's on us forever. But that's Jack Dorsey, right? Isn't it? Is that Peter Thiel?
This network includes the founders of YouTube, Tesla, Palantir, Affirm, Yelp, as well as executives from Reddit, Sequoia Capital, Square, and more. In 2003, he would then co-found LinkedIn and would grow it into becoming the world's biggest business-oriented social media platform, selling it in the end to Microsoft for over $25 billion. Today, Reid Hoffman sits on the board of directors at Microsoft, as well as having sat on the board at OpenAI for several years, among involvement in various other AI ventures, with a total net worth in the billions. He also happened to blatantly lie to the whole world about the nature of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. In 2019, after Epstein was first arrested, Hoffman went on record saying that he only ever met with him for the purpose of fundraising for the MIT Media Lab, where he had a position at the time. But it would turn out that that was not true, and he had in fact had many more meetings with Epstein up until less than a year before his arrest, as well as having visited his island for a weekend in the summer of 2014. In 2015, Hoffman wrote an email to Epstein after news of his involvement with Prince Andrew first hit the news, offering to help manage the negative press coverage online to cover up what they had been accused of. And the PayPal Mafia just keeps showing up in Epstein's inner circle. Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, and now even the company's founder himself, Peter Thiel, who also appears in the Epstein files far more often than he ever admitted on his own. Peter Thiel, after founding and selling PayPal in the early 2000s, became a central figure in Silicon Valley, but not as an entrepreneur himself. Instead, he began a career in venture capital that would be considered by many a form of political investing. He would fund tech companies that disrupted traditional industries, building up a huge portfolio of companies like Airbnb, Uber, Stripe. He was even the first outside investor in Facebook, giving them $500,000 in exchange for 10% of the company in 2005. Meanwhile, he would advocate for libertarian politics on the side, giving big donations to figures like Ron Paul and more. But over the years, Peter Thiel's political perspectives shifted dramatically, generating skeptical media attention and a variety of questions around the nature of his influence ever since. At various times, Peter Thiel has advocated against women's rights to vote, publicly questioned the viability of democracy itself, called for a hyper-capitalist corporate takeover of world government.
Not original. All of that he got from Curtis Yarvin. You got to look up Curtis Yarvin, yet another one of the architects of the horrifying world we find ourselves in. But like, Also, it's so sad that of all people, Curtis Yarvin was the one that they ended up taking as some kind of a guru. Because, like, he's so profoundly stupid. It's like he just misinterprets things like Lord of the Rings. He's the one who I think is the reason why so many of them have Lord of the Rings, like, upside down in their brains. And they've got this version of, like, events. Because, like, Curtis Yarvin's writing, he put and used terms from Lord of the Rings in a lot of it, which a lot of them, I think, adopted it. Calling, regular working class people hobbits. And, just basically he laid out this blueprint that explains that the reason why the world is moving in a bad direction is because of freedom, is because too many people have too much of a voice, and that this is causing chaos. There needs to be a technocracy ushered in. We need to end democracy. We need to end elections, free and fair elections. We need to have kind of a libertarian run, technocratic, fascist, dictatorial totality, which is basically now playing itself out in a lot of the ways that Peter Thiel's trying to enact his plan upon the world.
Governments, and most recently delivered a series of lectures alleging that the biblical Antichrist is publicly emerging right now in the real world from the movement for environmental conservation. Perhaps most notably, though, the one exception to his career of mostly investing and advocating would be, of course, his second company, Palantir. Now worth over $300 billion, Palantir specializes in building intelligence tools for military and police use, and has been identified by many as essentially operating like a private surveillance state. And Peter Thiel appears in the Epstein files over 2,000 times, with records showing various lunch events, meetings, and visits throughout the 2010s. And while Peter Thiel would say that his interactions with Epstein were purely a product of Epstein being a, quote, crazed networker, records that emerged later would tell a completely different story. Because by 2015, Peter Thiel and Jeffrey Epstein were literally doing business together. In 2015 and 2016, Epstein invested a total of $40 million in Valor Ventures, a venture capital firm that Thiel had co-founded for funding tech companies outside the typical Silicon Valley bubble. Around that same time, Epstein began pitching that Thiel's funds should invest in an Israeli software company called Carbine that was making emergency communication apps, and they would invest tens of millions of dollars. And in addition to that, the Epstein files revealed that there would be dozens more meetings between Peter Thiel and Jeff Epstein, showing countless invitations and conversations over the years. And despite Peter Thiel diminishing his relationship with Epstein as inconsequential and transactional, they in fact stayed in contact all the way up until just a couple months before Epstein died, far after the world began to take interest in his case yet again. But as I was going through this part of the files, it started to look like Peter Thiel being dishonest was actually the least interesting part of his relationship with Epstein. Instead, I started asking, how did Epstein get involved with this Israeli company in the first place? Who brought it to him? Who connected him to the Israeli tech world and pushed him to shop it around Silicon Valley? And the answer to that is that this company, Carbine, that's today worth over $900 million and deployed all over the world, was co-founded by yet another good friend of Jeffrey Epstein, the former Prime Minister of Israel itself. Ehud Barak is a former general in the IDF who was active in Israeli national politics from the late 90s to the early 2010s, serving at different times as the Minister of Defense, the leader of the Labour Party, the head of the IDF, and at one point even as the country's prime minister as a successor of Benjamin Netanyahu's first term. He also appears in the Epstein files over 4,000 times, and looking at their relationship as revealed by the release of the Epstein archives, we can see a level of connection that goes far beyond casual acquaintance. Because from 2013 to 2017, Barak and Epstein are on record having met at least 40 times, and for some years, they had scheduled appointments every month. Epstein functioned in many ways as Barak's secret advisor, giving financial and business advice, helping expand his network, and acting overall as a kind of sounding board. And even more than just visiting the island, which he also did, back in New York City, Barak and his wife would so frequently stay over at Epstein's Upper East Side apartment that it turned into a running joke for Epstein's staff. In 2015, Epstein's assistant emails her colleagues to ask, "Jeffrey is wondering if we can get faster internet for apartment 11J. Ehud is requesting it. Looks like this is slowly becoming his apartment." And if their social ties were close, their financial entanglements were even deeper. In 2015, Barak invested $1.5 million in a seed round for Reporty, later rebranded as Carbine, an Israeli emergency communications software startup. And much of the capital for that investment had been given to him directly from Epstein himself. And besides Barak, the only other investor in that initial round was the Israeli Ministry of Economy itself, which contributed $300,000. Basically, Jeffrey Epstein was deeply financially connected to the highest level of Israeli politics. According to Reason magazine, Epstein used Barack to seek out opportunities in the surveillance industry and build connections with powerful figures around the globe, including multiple figures in Israeli intelligence and figures in Vladimir Putin.
I'm glad this is finally getting a lot more, investigation, people talking about it, actually pointed it out. I feel the only problem is that, like, it's leading a large portion of the internet that would normally be concerned with, like, exposing these kind of connections, especially on a geopolitical level, to going down this kind of immediate conspiracy rabbit hole of that this is all top down, right? Epstein at the top, and then all the rest of the world was basically, being manipulated in some way or another. Whereas, like, you should really be thinking of Epstein as more of a broker in between different powerful people and levels of power. But it becomes a lot easier to understand if you apply, like, material analysis to every aspect of this, because all of these people, doesn't matter if they are politicians, they could be the Prime Minister of Israel, the President of the United States, they could be the CEO of Microsoft. They're all hanging out and palling around together. They're not thinking about personal loyalty to, say, nation states or that idea. Their class solidarity is operating on a very unified and higher level of people who are obviously rich, powerful, and those who control the world. They're not associating with one another, and, like, it's not like, hey, but this doesn't make sense. Why would someone do this when it might actually not be in the interest of the United States? It's like, it's in the interest of billionaires, all of it. These corporations, these companies, they could be American companies or corporations. Their loyalty wanes the minute the dollar does. That's why you'll see during, like, say, world events, like world wars, for example, companies will try to either rebrand as different company names to be able to sell to different markets, even if they are the enemy. Like, if you're going to sell literal fucking soda to quench the thirst of the Nazis, you better not brand it with an American brand that could potentially be harmed, right? That kind of stuff. Well, very similar in that, like, yeah, you have a whole bunch of world leaders. They're effectively brokering and dealing with power on levels that which we'll never comprehend, but a lot of it has to do with, hey, I've got billions of dollars. I have everything I need in my life. All my needs are always met, and they always will be. What do I do? What do I do? Time, money, power, right? What do I do with my resources? And in the case of Peter Thiel, it seems he wanted to invest internationally on every single possible tech industry and startup he could to be able to control them from the ground up. Like, there's a lot of them we'll never hear about, right? For every Substack and, every Rumble, there's going to be obviously a lot of attempts that never just got off the ground, and that's fine. Those are acceptable losses. He can throw $10 million, it doesn't do anything for him, at a company that may or may not actually, like, produce results in years. But for the ones that do take off, well, boom, Peter Thiel has his ability to have influence on nearly every major, like, startup and tech company. He thought, why don't I move beyond that? What if we do startups for companies in other markets, in other areas? What about warfare? And the idea of fusing the tech industry with the military-industrial complex, which happens to be one of the most profitable and endlessly profitable industries, because the U.S. taxpayer is always going to prop this up. Like, the U.S. taxpayers effectively are going to be this continuous, endless, you are the workers and the ones who produce all of the, what is known as value for the richest nation in the world, for sure. But we need a portion of all of your hard work at the end of the year to pay towards a government that is effectively going to use its imperial power to extract resources from other people in other countries and in perpetuity. The people at the very highest level, they're not playing team sports for America versus Israel versus Russia. They don't care about that. This is all billionaires.
Circle. Of course, there's still the question of what Barack knew and when. He has maintained that he had no idea Epstein was involved with underage girls, but leaked emails reported on by Straight Arrow News show that Barack's own aide sent him news articles about Epstein as early as 2011, 4 years before Epstein invested in Barack's companies. And so Epstein's relationship with a former Prime Minister of Israel has raised even further questions about what exactly Epstein's true role in politics may have been. Because as it would turn out, his connection with Barack wasn't just social and wasn't just financial. Not only is he hosting this guy at his house all the time, he's advising him on politics, emailing about how to deal with Iranian nuclear enrichment, pushing ideas about taking military action against Syria. They weren't just friends and business partners. Epstein was exerting influence with a political agenda as well. And of course, if you want to exert influence over me, you guys can now buy these sweaters where I design and do the embroidery by myself. It's pretty obvious what the meaning is here, that our entire world is being sold out to evil people. So if you want to buy the most morbid and grim YouTube merch ever made, it's available now. It's actually really high quality. The sweatshirts are super solid. They're made with American cotton.
If you want to support this channel, by the way, it's a new
best
channel to
pal,
me, so
and mentions
I
the
will hit subscribe. I'm sure you all probably know about it, though. It's much bigger, 700,000 subs. Volksgeist. Go check out Volksgeist.
interesting friends that Epstein
Wow, 26,000 likes and only 10 dislikes? You have a group of people who like your content and don't dislike this take.
loves to bring around. But still, it goes even further. They didn't just email each other little giggles and jokes. During this time in Mandelson's career, he was actively in office. And now, with more emails coming out, it's been revealed that he was illegally sending Jeffrey Epstein classified information about developments in UK politics. When writing to Epstein about new tax policies, he pledged to lobby his own government on behalf of an interest in lower taxes for bankers, like he and Epstein were working on that together. In 2010, he would give Epstein advance notice of a €500 billion bailout scheduled for the next day, and Epstein's documents also show records of him sending payments nearing $100,000 in value to Mandelson and his husband. In the aftermath of these documents being released, Mandelson has been branded as having betrayed his country, with London's Metropolitan Police launching a criminal investigation against him for misconduct in office. Essentially, Epstein had people within multiple foreign governments sending him privileged information. A disgraced former Prime Minister of Israel using Epstein as a shadow diplomat and a fixer across 3 continents. A sitting British cabinet minister leaking classified economic intelligence to him during the worst financial crisis in Britain's modern history. These are not the relationships of a socialite. These are the relationships of a man who operated at the intersection of money, intelligence, and power. And somehow, it still goes even deeper than that. Ariane de Rothschild, having married into the Rothschild family in the 1990s, is a French banker and current CEO of the Edmond de Rothschild Group, an offshoot of the Rothschild family dynasty that for centuries has dominated banking across Europe, establishing itself as the most influential family-controlled financial institution in the world. Ariane herself is worth an estimated $5 billion, and despite maintaining that she only knew Epstein in the context of her normal work duties, documents revealed that she in fact held dozens of personal meetings with him between 2013 and 2019, paid him a $25 million consulting contract, and also helped him find assistants, which according to many outlets was a code word for prostitutes. There are many, many other people in positions of power who appear in the Epstein files and add their own pieces to the puzzle. Catherine Rumler is an attorney who, following a decorated career as a federal prosecutor involved in convicting the Enron executives in the early 2000s, served for a while as White House counsel, the White House's personal lawyer, under the Barack Obama presidency. Today, she's the chief legal officer at Goldman Sachs. Essentially, she's one of the most powerful lawyers in the world. And when you search her name in the Epstein files, you'll find her corresponding with Epstein dozens of times, years after his conviction, years after he was a registered sex offender, years after everyone knew what he had done. Their emails, many of which were sent while she was working under the Obama administration, show Epstein arranging for her to fly on his plane, visit his island. It shows him sending her many tens of thousands of dollars worth of gifts, making jokes about his penis together. This is a former top lawyer for the president of the US, someone whose entire career was built on the premise of legal, ethical judgment, and she was socializing with a convicted pedophile like it was nothing. We've reached a point that's almost comical. For years, the curiosity around Epstein seemed like it might be more interesting than the real truth. Like, yeah, he was a pedophile, but that doesn't automatically mean he was running a secret file cabal of baby-killing billionaire freaks. But then his emails came out, and the truth is literally more insane than what people actually imagined in the first place. Epstein was at an almost surreal level of evil. There are things in here that people wouldn't have even made up, like the Rothschild family having Epstein on a retainer, like him talking about being at a pedophile convention with Woody Allen. It just goes on and doesn't stop. Researching this video felt like trying to drink an ocean. Every time I thought I found every person, there would be more. Every time I thought I had found out everything they did, there was more.
This isn't even the wild video that we were going to watch today, because the other one that I got, it actually goes into the culture war stuff, the 4chans, all the connections, like that stuff, the hyper online internet side of things, which for any of the fellow internet junkies, that's the part of the story where it's like, oh shit, I didn't even know for a long time. I've been tracking this. I've actually been following some of this story. I didn't know that I was following the story. I thought I was following a bunch of weirdos who were part of some strange QAnon conspiracy involving human sacrifice and stuff like that. And it's like, you don't know that was actually a distraction method that was being pushed by, in part, some of these actual people who were doing some of those things.
It makes the Epstein case feel like it might never die. Even now, after the release of 3 million documents, we know that the government holds 2.5 million more that they aren't going to show us. Every time they release anything, we're only left holding more questions than we had before. We now know who Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, keep in mind the stuff that they released in that last one, the one that's caused the biggest amount of controversies and arrests at this point, right? Both the Nance Andrew and Mendelsohn at this stage. There may be more coming into the future. We're not entirely sure. That's the redacted version. That's the version that they went over, they combed through, and they tried to redact as much stuff as they could in order to both satisfy the legal requirements of having to, divulge this information, but at the same time, nothing that could potentially harm the people whom Trump and his administration obviously want to protect. You can see from the connections to, say, the Obama administration or the Clintons, the reason why also under Democratic leadership, they had no interest in ever truly pursuing this, because anyone who was actually made aware of this and the scale and totality of it is going to be like, oh shit, this, there's a reason Pam Bondi keeps saying, if we release all the Epstein files, it'll destroy the entire system. The reason she keeps saying that as a defensive measure, by the way, as you don't want this. Trust me. Trust us. I say this to you Democrats. I'm not saying this as a threat, as in terms of us both having a lot to lose, we're both going down here. If people want to take this all down because they're like, holy shit, how bad are both members of both major political parties in the United States? This is what we're risking. And good. Yeah, that absolutely. That I'm counting on it. I'm banking on that. Absolutely. Yes. No. All of this needs to be exposed, and the world does need to learn. The problem is that, I feel so many people are going to fill the gap or the void with either, and that's why the whole thing was the Jews all along. And you're like, no, but what? Jesus Christ. Okay. Or people are going to be like, and that's why Obama is the true enemy here, or the lizard people, or other shit like that. And it's like, nah, we're getting more evidence every single time that there's documents that come out about this, that yeah, rich billionaires in positions of power have been working and collaborating with each other. This is happening all the time across the board. Not necessarily the abuse of the children and all those horrifying illegal activities are all taking, but I'm talking about billionaires meeting with politicians, meeting in secret, having conversations in secret, talking to each other, and discussing things that will impact the lives of millions, if not billions of people, of which we, on the other end of that, have to just basically suddenly be like, holy shit, I can't believe it. This event just happened. This world event just happened. And you're like, yeah, that's pretty wild. This world event just happened. Not knowing that a handful of people could have been behind the scenes, discussing, so what do we need to do to accelerate making this event happen?
And spent the last 10 years of his life with, who embraced him after his crimes were known. But that isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning. Because ultimately, just Epstein having rich and powerful friends, that's not really proof of anything. But right now, there are more emails depicting crimes horrific beyond our imagination. Emails that reveal things about our world that are beyond what we thought was possible. There are records available right now that show that the truth about Epstein is far darker than what we had originally even feared. For decades, our society has been obsessed with the idea of secret elite gatherings where the rich and powerful engage in dark rituals behind closed doors. Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, released in 1999, just weeks after his death, depicted masked aristocrats conducting occult sexual ceremonies in mansions, and we saw it as an exaggerated metaphor, a filmmaker's dream about wealth and depravity pushed to the nightmarish extreme for the sake of storytelling. But now there's this huge cultural resurgence around the movie because the Epstein files have made it impossible to see things like this as just movies anymore. The masked parties, the trafficked women, the implication that anyone who looks too close will be silenced, the idea that the real world operates on a set of rules that ordinary people are never allowed to see, it's not fiction anymore. If anything, the reality appears like it's probably far worse. In Eyes Wide Shut, the movie shows one night in one mansion with one group of people, but the Epstein archives show us a system spanning decades, continents, and virtually every pillar of power in the Western world. At the same time, we see how it was operating in plain sight. Because these aren't random rich people we're talking about. These are the people who decide what technology we use, what companies we work for, what laws get passed, what wars we fight, what information we see and what we don't see. The Secretary of Commerce, the richest man on earth, the founder of LinkedIn, the people building the AI that's going to shape the next century, the people who advise presidents and prime ministers. This is the elite of the elite. There is no one higher than this. And look, I get it. The government's been telling us for years that there's nothing to see here, that the conspiracies are overblown, that Epstein was just one sick criminal and Maxwell was his only accomplice. The DOJ says they found no co-conspirators. Officials insist that every wild theory or accusation is just paranoia. But then you keep reading and you find an email from a billionaire in Dubai that says, "I loved the torture video." Then another one is full of redacted images with the caption age 11. Then there's another email where they're talking about pizza and grape soda while giggling that no one else can understand. And then you find out that he was doing
Unknown OV2KZ or Z. Thanks for the £5. I'm pretty sure the only reason Andrew was arrested is because he's a scapegoat for the monarchy. As polling is on its lowest ever that it's been. I mean, you could explain it more than I would ever know. British folk. I've never thought that Britain had a stomach for abolishing the monarchy, and I still don't. I just think there's just too many old entrenched Brits who think that it's a necessary part of British culture, and to abolish it would be to effectively destroy a part of who they are. So while it is, mostly ceremonial, and yes, the British taxpayer pays so many pounds per year in their taxes to support the crown, you get it back in the form of, property rental tax payments, and seeing the king wave his hands every couple of seconds in a few generations, maybe. Because I've had it since I was born, but I also have an indigenous mom who was raising me to be like, the crown sucks. But Canadians do not have it. There's every poll. I'm always on the opposite side of this when I talk to people. I'm like, yeah, fucking abolish the monarchy, eh? And I'm like, oh no, it's charming. I like it. I just like having a little attachment, to the whole regal European stuff. It's fun. King Charles comes here every now and then. We get to do the way. We're like, that's our king, even though, functionally, I don't know. I think it's cute.
Business with Israeli politicians and British politicians and American politicians and their advisors, Democrats and Republicans, and writing about Mossad and Jewish supremacy and how to get children addicted to video games and how to breed perfect babies and how to make young men disillusioned and believe in extremist politics. And then you actually look at what's in these files, not what the government says is in them, but what's actually in there. And it's not just bad, it's not just disturbing, it's enough to make our deepest, darkest conspiracies look like a joke. Every one of the worst, most strangest, insane ideas that's been said about Epstein turns out to have real evidence towards its truth. And so if you think what we've looked at so far is disturbing, if you think the list of rich, influential people who stayed around Epstein after they knew what he was is horrifying, we haven't even gotten to the bad part yet. What we need to understand now is what they were doing, what Epstein's purpose was, why he was so valuable that the most powerful people on Earth couldn't walk away, why the government let him operate for decades, why his network reached into intelligence agencies and political movements, and why all of this was allowed to happen in plain sight. Because this is how our world really works. This is the level of wealth and power where the rules do not apply. For decades, our society has been obsessed with the darkness of the upper levels of power. We've written books and made movies speculating what...
I just want to get to a little bit more. Because the other video, which I do want to watch, and I will, it's over an hour, and it's very dense, full of internet conspiracies. The greatest kind.
Why his network reached into intelligence agencies and political movements, and why all of this was allowed to happen in plain sight. Because this is how our world really...
This channel has been demonetized. This video, I think, did, but I'll share the link because it's really well put together, and you should watch it in its entirety without all my silly interruptions.
For the back 9 holes like the other cunt. That's a real document in the Epstein files. But of course, just because it's real doesn't make it true. Trump Golf Course in California wasn't open until 2006, 10 years after this story supposedly takes place. The Epstein files, which include over 3 million images, documents, and videos, also include nearly every single tip the FBI ever received, verified or not, with regards to his case. And if all of them were true, the world right now would be in some really deep shit. Like billionaires and presidents having parties on boats where they eat kids type of mythological demonic shit. One of of them reads, on the yacht he witnessed babies being dismembered, their intestines removed, and individuals eating the feces from the intestines. He was then raped by George H.W. Bush. But even though many of these tips likely aren't true or even possible, that doesn't mean that the Epstein files still don't call into question everything we think we know about the world we live in today. And look, a lot of what went viral after these files dropped was fake. The email saying that Epstein invented Bitcoin, fake. The Fortnite account supposedly proving he was alive in Israel playing video games on his Xbox all day, fake.
Oh, yeah, but people didn't actually, like, beyond the memes believe that one, right? Because, like, the latest Epstein files revelations shows you his corpse. Like, you can see that Epstein is dead. Like, that was one of those things where it's like, oh, it's actually a good thing that they showed that photo simply because it's going to put to rest a lot of the conspiracy theorists who will not stop this whole, oh, Epstein's actually secretly alive conspiracy thing, when, like, you know, most of the people who would look to or have anything to gain from that potential possibility, you know, are not directly benefiting from that conspiracy. So it's weird that it's being spread. But if you don't know the Fortnite one, someone with a similar account name to Jeffrey Epstein's own personal social media accounts on a different platform that had the exact same username, had a username that was started on Steam prior to his death. And so they were associating that Steam account with Jeffrey Epstein, because again, it's just unusual that someone would pick that series of, you know, letters and numbers. And then that same Steam account has been playing video games, including Fortnite in Israel, for years after his death, leading people to believe that that in fact was Jeffrey Epstein playing Fortnite in Tel Aviv. And there's no evidence that that's actually Jeffrey Epstein, outside of the fact that it's an account that now has been closed down that had the same username. But that's the extent of the whole conspiracy theory. And then I was like, but why, of all the things that, like, Jeffrey Epstein could have been doing with one of the most intricate, complex, no, the most, because it would have involved a cover-up, including Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump was the president of the United States. Now, there's evidence pointing towards perhaps Donald Trump may have either known that Jeffrey Epstein was going to be killed or wanted to kill him, stuff like that. Like, it's all speculation, but if it turns out that Donald Trump, while the president of the United States, in some way oversaw a conspiracy to have Jeffrey Epstein assassinated or covered up or something to that effect, there's going to be a huge amount of people who just run with that conspiracy. There's even more people who are running with the conspiracy that Epstein was alive and never died, and because of that, there's evidence. You can find it outside and go look for it. And obviously, it's wasting so many people's time because, yeah, they're going on. But is Epstein alive? Is he playing Fortnite? The answer is no.
AI-generated photos of politicians unfortunately fake. People lost their minds over a bank account that they thought Epstein named after an ancient Jewish demon, but it ended up being a computer glitch. It was supposed to say balance. And this stuff is crazy and it generates headlines, but at the same time, it buries the truth under a mountain of noise. Because you don't need crackhead stories about burying girls under a golf course to see that the truth is ultimately even more horrifying than anything that anyone could have made up in the first place. On September 22nd, 2016, Jeffrey Epstein receives an email with redacted images attached, sent just minutes apart. One is labeled pussy, one is labeled girls, and one is labeled age 11. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's not an anonymous tip from someone who's requesting Bitcoin to prove the truth.
Cartoon49, thank you for the $2. Did you see the Birdman takedown on Asmongold? I haven't. I will add it to my list.
These are real emails that Epstein was getting and sending, exposed by the US Department of Justice. But before 2025, the case against Jeffrey Epstein, at least in the public eye, was built primarily on suspicion. The idea that Jeffrey Epstein was part of something much bigger than himself and that other people were involved, it came from two facts. Number one, Jeffrey Epstein was rich, a pedophile, and had a ton of powerful friends. And number two, he was found dead in a jail cell under suspicious circumstances. That alone is something where you don't need to be crazy to hear it and think something's wrong. In fact, you might be crazy if you hear that and don't think something was wrong. And so as a result, in the last couple of years, even though the historical, political, legal narrative was that Epstein worked alone and didn't leave any footprints behind, he still became this symbol of everything wrong with our society. Epstein came to represent corruption, specifically the idea that people at the top of society play by a completely different set of rules than the rest of us. That not only did he get away with crimes against humanity under everyone's noses for decades, but before he could even be forced to answer for what he had done, he mysteriously died while he was...
I feel the Epstein files need the Sean treatment. I don't know, like, part of me almost feels it's beneath him in that, like, Sean is so good at being able to do deep research into topics and actually be able to break apart all of the most popular possible arguments on any given topic. Like, doesn't matter if it's like the Japanese bombing Hiroshima, the justification for that, the morality of that. Like, I think he's like out without equal in that territory. With Epstein, I feel that, like, in terms of, say, Donald Trump, if you need a compilation, I'd recommend Some More News that has an episode on Trump where it's like, it's not just like one or two things, which them in isolation would be bad, right? Like him openly stating that he walks in on teenagers changing, that he's attracted to young women, that he's written a love letter to Jeffrey Epstein about pedophilia, that he's actually said that him and Jeffrey Epstein like women on the younger side, like all those kind of things. In isolation, they're all just weird and creepy, right? But when you start to stack just the totality of the amount of Trump shit that there is, you're like, oh, this is the guiltiest man that ever lived. Like, that's the line they keep saying. Like, there's no clearer example of anyone, and there's some really guilty motherfuckers here. Like, you know, there's photos of Bill Clinton with Epstein survivors and getting massages from them. So there's a lot of guilty people, but no one looks worse when you put everything together than Donald Trump.
Sitting in a maximum security prison wing. It looked a little too convenient. It looked a little too much like someone wanted the truth to die with him. And that's why it didn't. And then slowly, very slowly, evidence came out and it showed us that the truth was even worse than we had suspected. At first, it was small. Little drawings, notes, inside jokes, small packets of information showing that, hey, Epstein wasn't just really good at hiding being a pedophile, everyone around him knew it and they didn't care. And then finally, after years of pressure, 3 million documents from Epstein's computers were released and revealed that it wasn't the case that Epstein ever got away with anything. In reality, he didn't just get away with the crimes he had committed in the first place. He was allowed to keep going and make friends with the world billionaires, politicians, and thinkers all at the same time. On Friday, April 24th, 2009, Epstein, still in prison after his 2008 conviction of prostituting minors, emails a friend to say, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." That email would be revealed to have been sent to none other than Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of a shipping company called DP World that handles over 70 million shipping containers annually.
Also, is the company that runs a lot of the ports in Canada, apparently. So if you're a Canadian, you may have been using one of his ports.
Roughly 10% of shipping traffic in the entire world. His brother, Mohammed bin Sulayem, is president of the FIA, the governing body of Formula One car racing. Bin Sulayem also spent years on the board for the Sovereign Wealth Fund in the UAE and is a landowner in Dubai's Palm Islands. He's one of the most powerful and richest people in all of Dubai. But it goes, of course, even deeper than just emailing each other about torture videos. In 2016, the larger island neighboring Epstein's Little St. James, Great St. James, went up for sale, and Epstein, having already had his bids denied while trying to buy it in the past on account of being a sex offender, made a holding company in Sulayem's name to purchase the island for $22 million. Other emails between them involve sharing links to porn videos and discussing politics. At one point, Sulayem would email Epstein to tell him the Ukrainian and the Moldavian arrived. Big disappointment that the Moldavian is not as attractive as the picture. This is literal confirmation in writing from a first-hand, first-party involved person that Epstein was trafficking women to different powerful people around the world. Everything they said about Epstein was true.
Which would make Pam Bondi and Kash Patel having lied under oath. Both of them.
True. Here he is with a man who controls one of the biggest shipping companies in the world, one of the most powerful men in the Arab world, talking about torture porn while he's in prison, sending him prostitutes and getting him to help him buy more islands. Epstein was exactly who they said he was. He was doing horrific, disgusting shit with people who sit at the highest level of power and influence in the world. And the more you read, the worse and worse it gets. In 2014, someone writes to him, "Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty." After US congressmen were allowed to view unredacted Epstein files in a secure context, they would report back that many files that had been redacted were relating to crimes against 15, 14, 10, and even 9-year-old girls. They would also say that they had identified at least 6 men, one a high-ranking foreign government official, one a prominent public figure, who were all directly involved in Epstein's trafficking activities. There is now undeniable proof that Epstein was doing exactly what everyone suspected he was doing. He was running a ring of pedophilia with the richest people in the world. Other files in the Epstein library include an FBI document with a list of underage victims, acknowledgement that Epstein was in possession of 14.6 terabytes of what they called obscene material, and countless redactions filed under child sexual abuse material not scanned. But here's what gets me. Those emails, the torture video, the littlest girl, the age 11, these are the ones where they were talking casually, where they aren't hiding anything. But many more of the Epstein emails turn out to contain evidence of stuff that's far worse going on just below the surface. Something that, again, was before considered a nightmare too disgusting to even be possible. In 2016, just before Donald Trump won the presidency, a conspiracy theory alleging that prominent Democrat politicians were running a human trafficking operation using seemingly normal food-related words like pizza, pasta, and cheese as code for activities linked to child sexual abuse and human trafficking went viral. Following that, people became convinced that Comet Ping Pong, a pizza restaurant in Washington, D.C., was a meeting ground for the satanic ritual abuse that these politicians were allegedly engaged in. The story eventually attracted mainstream media attention, and within a couple of weeks, a 28-year-old man from North Carolina traveled up to DC and began firing an AR-15 at the restaurant, among other violent incidents. In the end, no substantial evidence of the Pizzagate story was ever produced, and the conspiracy is mostly remembered as being a product of the mentally unstable far right.
Well, yeah, like didn't someone actually go into the Comet Pizza and demand to see the basement and the closets, which were filled with stuff that would be in a Comet Pizza's basement and closets? Cleaning supplies, frozen pizzas, stuff like that.
Easiest fake news of all is something called Pizzagate.
Yeah, with a gun.
People actually believe a conspiracy theory that Hillary Clinton and her former campaign manager, John Podesta...
They didn't even have a basement. Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah, the guy with the gun showed up and was just like, take me to your basement so I can free the children. And they were like, we don't actually have a basement.
ran a child sex ring at a pizzeria in D.C. This is a lie. So where did this conspiracy theory start? Apparently, some alt-right folks were combing through Clinton campaign emails hacked by Russia and published by WikiLeaks and noticed there seems to be more references to pizza and pizzerias than they had expected, which can only mean one thing: secret sex ring.
But when the Epstein library was released, something strange happened. Because buried in these millions of emails across years of correspondence with countless different people, Epstein and the people around him were essentially speaking in a way that is exactly like what Pizzagate had described. And
which leads me to the point of the story that we're at now, where we don't know what bridges this gap. We don't have that piece of the puzzle, right? Like that's essentially the missing archaeological fossil that we're all trying to discover. But we don't know when and where specifically elements of what Epstein may have actually been doing became a central piece of the right-wing and MAGA-driven conspiracies, such as QAnon, Pizzagate, etc. The overlap is undeniable in terms of why in the world would someone do a red herring in a direction that is so similar to the way they were actually communicating to each other about actual crimes.
it's in there over and over again. The word pizza itself appears in the Epstein files over 900 times, with countless examples that make it clear they weren't actually talking about food. One email reads, "This is better than a Chinese cookie. Let's go for pizza and grape soda again. No one else can understand. What time do you want to get pizza and grape soda tomorrow? Your pizza is yummy yummy. Feeny asking about a pizza party this weekend." And it wasn't just pizza. Epstein's staff would receive instructions using air quotes around all sorts of words that clearly had alternate meanings. J.E. has confirmed he would like you to serve snacks at 8 p.m. on Tuesday. Jabor would like to come see Jeffrey today at 1 p.m. He wants snacks. Can you be in charge of snacks? I asked if he wanted lunch and he said no, snacks. They're literally distinguishing between the real word and the code word in the same email. The person writing this knows that snacks doesn't mean snacks. They literally clarify that they aren't talking about lunch. Of course, I'm not necessarily saying that Pizzagate was true. I don't really believe that there were people trafficking little kids out of the basement of a pizza shop. Add on to that the fact...
In the same way the OK symbol ended up being used to represent white power, they did it to mock the left and then ironically started using it. Yeah, I think this one's a little more complex though, just because of the fact that there has to be a point, and I don't know where because we don't again have that piece, of someone deciding that these were elements that they wanted to start putting into broader conspiracies that they would have the ability to influence, right? Like I don't know what the connection is there. I don't know who was speaking to whom, if it's one of those weirdos who may be Q at the end of the day, if that was something that they were, taking upon themselves. I don't know. We don't have those parts. It just seems unbelievable that there was such a prominent far-right conspiracy theory involving something that is completely fabricated, right? Like, to be clear, Hillary Clinton, when she wrote to her interns about pizza parties, they were talking about pizzas. Like, not only did the pizza parties themselves occur where the pizza's eaten, but like the staffers who were on staff can, give firsthand testimonies. Yes, we met at this time for this and we had pizza, right? Like, so that was not code word for pedophilia. And when the right ran with that and they were like, oh yeah, every single time that Hillary said pizza, they meant pedophiles. And that's why the children are being held at the pizza parlors. They're running with an idea of something where behind the scenes, the actual pedophile cult run by some of the richest and most powerful people, including her husband, right? Like they're still, they have their own ties to all of this in their own ways. They're actually using the term pizza and snacks as code words for pedophilia.
That none of the politicians that were accused of being involved in Pizzagate are mentioned in the Epstein files at all. But the core idea, this idea that the historical narrative decided was a joke, that powerful people involved in the systemic abuse of
it feels like QAnon was right, but they were just wrong about who. I think they would, to be fair, QAnon is wrong about so many things. Like, there's parts of QAnon that are just utterly and still, to me, unbelievably hilarious. That in some way Donald Trump was actually working behind the scenes to take down the worst elements of the deep state as some kind of, inner force. Like, that's so funny. Like, such a strange male power fantasy manifests come to life. Like, those AI videos you see of Trump, like, all masculine and greased up and huge muscles and stuff like that. It was that just manifested itself into a complete world encompassing vision of how the actual universe operates, and anyway, it worked from the top on down. Like, Donald Trump is our guy. He's in the inside. He's taking down the deep state. Like, there was people in QAnon when things went bad that couldn't wrap their heads around how did everything turn out to be wrong, and then it was like, oh well, no, Trump actually did win the election, and now Biden is actually Trump wearing a Biden skin suit because Trump's still in power, but now he's going deeper undercover as Biden in the Biden administration, as Trump wearing the Biden suit to stop them. Like, it just, again, it's spiraling. It's just more and more and listening endlessly. But at what point was someone who was doing the actual fucking, pedophilia stuff, at what point did they let that leak or put that into the ether that QAnon should be exposed to the concept of pizza being a code word for this kind of stuff?
Children were communicating using words for food as a code. That wasn't crazy at all. In fact, it's exactly what was happening. It's just back then, 10 years ago, they didn't really get right who was doing it. And pizza is far from the only word that gives credibility to this theory. In fact, there are others that are way more suspicious. For example, Epstein and his staff spend hours talking about his obsession with jerky, how they have to bring it on planes and fly it around the world just to make sure he has enough. Why would someone in Epstein's position in life, with his money, his status, and his schedule, have time to obsess over beef jerky for hours every week? Why are there emails where Epstein is asking people on his staff how to deal with the frozen white tuna? Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire. Billionaires are not sitting around worried about how to manage the contents of the dozen different refrigerators at their 6 different homes. This is a moment where you have to remember the story of Jean-Luc Brunel, the French modeling agent who received millions of dollars from Jeffrey Epstein in 2004 to pay for the launch of a new modeling agency that would go on to run campaigns for some of the biggest retailers in the world, from Nordstrom to Target and Sears and more, while at the same time Epstein would be quoted as saying he had slept with over 1,000 of Brunel's girls, having had girls from the agency flown to his houses and island from all over the world. American authorities would go on to call Brunel a co-conspirator of Epstein, and he ultimately went into hiding after Epstein's death in 2019 before being arrested by French National Police in Paris and hanging himself before he could stand trial. Seeing Epstein write about moving jerky around the world on planes, worrying about where to put all of his frozen white tuna, planning pizza parties with other elites, it's hard not to connect these dots. Sometimes they didn't hide what they were doing at all. In 2019, on February 14th, Epstein gets an email that says, "The kid couldn't have done bikini wax because her hairs are too short.
Jesus
Next time,
Christ.
Sir, I'm already at the dentist. waiting for the kid. Then there was the dentist. In Epstein's emails, the dentist is mentioned almost 2,000 times. He writes about sending other people to the dentist in New York. There was a dentist room on his island featuring masks resembling his friends across the walls.
Yeah, that shit was
in one
creepy as
email,
fuck.
he writes to someone telling them to send $20,000 to the dentist for redacted. There are emails where Epstein is complaining.
Yeah, I mean, this is about the point in the Epstein files where, like, I completely understand what Rebecca was trying to say without saying it, but it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, so why aren't people charging at the White House? Why aren't people, like, in totality, like, you know, every American now demanding, hey, by the way, we need to arrest these people, all of them, like all of them, not just like, you know, the couple of the key ones here or there, but like just every single one of these people. Like, this could be the largest, you know, organized and then covered up what seems to be a child abuse network since the Catholic Church, and it's just no consequences for anybody. It's kind of one of those things where it's just like, so we're just supposed to go back to normal? We're just supposed to, like, go about our day? It seems like that's something that's, like, asked of everybody every single time there's something else that's like, hey, by the way, yeah, we might be going to war. We're going to war. We're going to take down Iran. We're going to war. We're going to take down this country. We need to defend Israel against the terrorists, all this kind of shit. And it's like, yeah, this is all an administration being run, it feels like, in totality by pedophiles, criminals.
Thank you so much to our patrons for making this show possible. We could not fund it without you. And if you want to join, please check out patreon.com/theserfs to unlock bonus episodes, uncensored content, and all the good stuff. Thanks to Anna Loves Riley, Addercap, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hegbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet One 85, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Tigwick, and Words Greenwood.